let's jump right into today's explainer, guys. We're tackling a really big essential question today. How exactly did geography and changes in food production shape early Japanese society? Now, spoiler alert, we aren't going to be looking at samurai, shoguns, or grand castles today. Nope, we are rewinding the clock way, way back. We're going to see how the physical landscape itself and how people literally just figured out how to feed themselves laid the ground rules for an entire civilization. It's an absolutely amazing story of adaptation and change.
Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. First up, geography's influence. Then, the Jōmon communities. Third, the Yayoi Transformation. Fourth, going from farming to political power. And finally, why this matters. Let's get right into it.
All right, Section 1, Geography's Influence, setting the stage.
So right off the bat, Japan is an archipelago. That's just a fancy geographic term for a chain or group of islands. It's mostly made up of 4 major islands: Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu, plus literally thousands of smaller ones. But check out where it is. It's perfectly situated just off the eastern coast of Asia, super close to the Korean Peninsula and China. And you know, that proximity is going to be absolutely crucial for our story because it allowed for vital cultural exchange, migration, and cool new technologies to eventually make their way across the water. Now, if you look at the terrain itself, you'll see that much of Japan is heavily mountainous. And because those steep forested mountains made travel really hard and farming basically impossible, the limited flat lowlands became incredibly valuable. This rugged geography literally forced early settlements toward the coasts and along the river valleys. Those flat areas were where people could actually build homes, find fresh water, and access the ocean for fish and seaweed. Basically, the geography totally dictated the real estate.
I want you to pause for a second and really think actively about this landscape. We've got these islands surrounded by the Sea of Japan, the East China Sea, and the Pacific Ocean. How could the surrounding sea act as both a barrier to isolate Japan, yet also serve as a highway? Well, on one hand, that vast ocean protected early communities from constant invasions, right? It gave them breathing room to develop their own unique traditions. But on the flip side, boats turned that exact same sea into a travel route, bringing people, goods, and brand new ideas straight over from the mainland.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Jōmon communities adapting to the land. Since we're talking about prehistory here, the time before written text, to understand the Jōmon people, we really have to put on our archaeologist hats. We have to look at the material evidence they left behind. Check out these 2 awesome examples. On the left, you've got a reconstruction of a pit dwelling. These were homes built partly below ground with a central fire pit to keep families warm and sheltered. And on the right, shell middens. Honestly, these are basically ancient trash heaps, filled with discarded shells and animal bones. But to an archaeologist, a trash heap is an absolute gold mine. It reveals exactly what these people were eating and how smartly they adapted to their forests, rivers, and coastal environments to survive.
Now, these highly skilled hunter-gatherer communities are actually named after their totally unique cord-marked pottery. The word Jōmon literally translates to cord-marked in Japanese, referring to those beautiful rope-like patterns you see pressed right into the clay. But listen, this pottery wasn't just for looking pretty. It was a massive technological breakthrough. They cleverly used these heavy clay pots for cooking food, boiling the things they gathered, and safely storing their resources. And that storage meant they could stay in relatively stable settlements, rather than having to constantly wander around looking for food.
So the really crucial point here is understanding how to interpret this kind of evidence. Pause and consider this. What can a simple clay pot actually tell us about their daily life, technology, or trade? And what mysteries does it leave completely unsolved? Well, a pot definitely reveals what they ate, their artistic skills, and how they stored food. If we find that exact same pottery miles and miles away, it might even point to ancient trade routes. But material evidence can't tell us the whole shebang. It can't prove what language they spoke, the names of their leaders, or their deepest spiritual beliefs. Good historians always make sure to separate what they can observe from what they can actually prove. And as you can see on this timeline, these historical periods definitely didn't just change overnight. The Jōmon period lasted for thousands of years, starting way back around 14,000 BCE. But the transition to the next phase, the Yayoi, happened super gradually. From roughly 900 to 300 BCE, Jōmon and Yayoi practices actually overlapped across different regions. History isn't like flipping a light switch, guys. It's a slow fade as new ideas slowly spread from one community to the next.
All right, Section 3, the Yayoi Transformation, a new way of life.
Over time, migration and a whole lot of cultural interaction with the Korean peninsula brought some incredible innovations to Japan. And the absolute biggest one, wet rice farming. Instead of just gathering wild plants, people started carefully growing rice in flooded fields called paddies. And right alongside this, they brought over metalworking. They started creating ritual bronze objects like those cool dotaku bells used in ceremonies, and super strong iron tools for farming and woodworking. This was a real game changer. It radically shifted how people worked, organized their daily lives, and built up their settlements.
Take a quick moment to think about this massive agricultural shift. Why would growing rice in flooded paddies force communities to cooperate way more than hunting and gathering ever did? Think about it. Wet rice farming is definitely not a one-person job. To make it work, communities literally had to build and maintain complex irrigation channels, share the water supply, perfectly time their planting, and harvest everything together. It demanded a level of organized, scheduled teamwork that simply wasn't necessary in the past.
Which brings us to Section 4, Farming to Political Power, the Chain Reaction. Let's trace exactly how agriculture built political power, step by step. It's like a giant domino effect. Step 1, managing those paddies required coordinated labor. Step 2, that amazing teamwork yielded huge harvests, creating a food surplus, basically way more rice than they needed right away. Step 3, all that surplus food reliably fed more people, sparking massive population growth. Step 4, those larger populations built bigger, permanent villages. Step 5, within those villages, certain families or leaders stepped up and took control of the very best land and all that stored rice. And finally, Step 6. This control created a strict social hierarchy, where some people held a ton more status and power than others, eventually leading to the rise of powerful regional clans.
Reflect on that wild sequence for a second. How exactly does extra rice stored safely in a raised building translate into actual wealth and authority over other people? Well, if you control the food supply, you literally control survival. Leaders who protected the stored rice could hand it out during tough times, use it to trade for super valuable iron tools, or even use it to pay specialized workers and warriors. Food literally became the very first form of currency and leverage. It's mind-blowing when you really think about it.
Okay, wrapping things up as Section 5, why this matters, the long-term impact. You see, these historical developments didn't just change what people ate for dinner. As you can see here, they laid the very foundation for Japanese society. Japan's mountainous geography established a permanent pattern of settling in valleys and coasts. Wet rice farming deeply ingrained a culture of community cooperation and permanent living. And the introduction of agricultural surpluses and new metal tools brought about lasting social inequality and centralized leadership. The roots of Japan's later highly complex states were literally planted right there in the mud of the rice paddies. Before we completely wrap up, I want you to evaluate the evidence just like an archaeologist or historian would. Looking at the massive shift from the Jōmon period to the Yayoi period, which single development from today's explainer do you believe had the greatest long-term impact on early Japan? Was it the geographic isolation, the pottery, the wet rice farming, or maybe the iron tools? There are a bunch of right answers here, for sure, as long as you can back up your claim with solid evidence. So, to really lock in what you've learned today, grab a piece of paper and complete these two thoughts in your own words. Japan's geography shaped early society by, and the Yayoi Transformation mattered because. Taking a minute to physically write this out will really cement these massive historical shifts in your brain. Today, we've seen how tiny villages turned into strict hierarchies, and how those hierarchies evolved into powerful clans. But what on earth happens when these powerful, heavily armed clans inevitably clash over the limited resources of this island nation? Well, that is a story for another time. Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and keep thinking like an archaeologist.